everyone, this is Marie Blue Angel here, and I am back with Under the False Sky Hecatomb. I realize that I may not be saying that name right. What if it's Hecatomb? Potentially. I'm gonna continue to say Hecatomb, but forgive me if I am butchering the name. Last time we left off, and I believe our little group of researchers was captured, and we met Ash, and it seems like Ash is asking someone who said no to their request to be more lenient or to let go the researchers, I'm assuming. And so that's kind of where we are. We're in this private library office of sorts. So without further ado, let's just get into it. We just missed the voice acting where the person just said no. I said no is how I'm going to summarize that or continue with that. A powerful voice resonated through the room, threatening to break through the windows and doors, tearing the innocent residents from their daily routine. Oh, very loud then. Okay. With the strong arms folded over his chest, the village's chief, Marduk, towered like a gigantic tree over his daughter, his stern gaze fixed on her. Okay, so that's Ash's father.
Dad.
But...
Listen.
Asherah, I will not repeat myself. These strangers are trespassers. But... She went silent. The last thing she wanted was for her father to resent her. And yet, the lives of 6 innocent people were at stake. She had to be brave, if not for their souls, then for her own conscience. She raised her head and was met with the intensity of his petrifying stare, that is quite the stare, which threatened to crush her. With all her strength...
No!
Oh. With all her strength, I can't let that happen. I can't let you execute them.
Ash.
Please be reasonable. The chief, your father, is right. It's for the best, not just for our village, but for the future of the world. Who are you? I say, as the person's going to be revealed in the next second, aka now. Oh, hello. The young woman felt a strong hand on her shoulder. From the corner of her eye, she could see her childhood friend, who was previously leaning against the wall, with his arms crossed over his chest, now standing behind her. His gray eyes searched anxiously for hers, for the understanding of the girl with whom he had spent most of his life.
Well?
Suin is right. It's not the first time these people have dared to cross the border. How is this time any different? Who are you? Now, her friend, Nuha, had also stepped forward to join the conversation. With one hand resting on her hip, she stood next to Asherah's father. A broad grin formed on her face as though she was getting a kick out of ending these 6 lives. This time, I can stop innocent blood from being shed. This is different. But she didn't dare raise her voice. Surrounded by the people she cared about, a lump formed in her throat, making it difficult for her to breathe. Her focus wandered to the floor of her father's office, which she had been scrubbing just a few hours prior. As she knelt on the cold ground, she heard a frantic commotion from outside. It was unusual to hear anything other than the chirping of birds during the midday hours, as most of the villagers were eating or resting in their houses. And yet, almost the entire village seemed to be gathered at the square in front of her home.
Huh?
What? Did something happen? She quickly rinsed the rag in the bucket of water next to her and then dragged herself onto her feet. Clumsily, she hopped over the spots that hadn't dried yet to the door. As she stepped outside, she was engulfed by the blinding midday sun and a flood of disarrayed voices. But she didn't have much time to get adjusted to the change in her surroundings.
Ash!
Ash, the craziest thing just happened. Her energetic friend rushed towards her, grabbing her by the arms and shaking her. Like a twig in a tornado, Asherah simply accepted her fate and covered her face with her hands, so that at least she was no longer exposed to the sun.
What?
What happened? Come. I mean, I'm assuming this is when the researchers were taken captive. Oh, slash found, you know, underground, near the crystal stuff. Instead of answering her question, however, Nuha grabbed her hand and pulled her to the square, which was packed with villagers. Huddled in small groups, they murmured amongst themselves, from worry to anger to fear. Almost every possible emotion was reflected on their faces, but they were all negative. It seems like the whole village is here. I can't believe it happened again. Don't these intruders ever learn their lesson?
What's happening? Mom, I'm scared. It's going to be okay, sweetheart. The chief will protect us.
Asherah's attention turned to the older, frail lady further to her right. With a hunched back, the only thing seemingly keeping her on her feet was her sturdy, massive wooden cane. All alone she stood there, her gaze directed at the group, yet she seemed to look at nothing and no one.
Hey.
Greetings, grandmother.
Granny!
Oh, Granny, you're here too. Good day, Asherah. With her mind appearing to be elsewhere, the old woman replied slowly, her unfocused gaze still averted. Choose your words a little more carefully, Nuha. Is this also how you speak to our priestess?
Ahem.
The priestess just so happens to be my best friend, so yes, I can. How can you? Asherah couldn't help but grin at the expression of disbelief that Nuha gave her in response. Getting a reaction out of her was way too easy. But she needed to focus on the matters at hand.
Well,
Grandmother, can you tell me what happened? All she got in response was a silent grumble. But why was it taking her so long to answer? They found 6 strangers near the mother crystal.
what?
What? Okay, you called that a mother crystal. What? Her palms began to feel clammy and her heart beat painfully heavy. Why are outsiders here? Coming here is like a death sentence. Is it really their death? I can't do the grandmother voice very well. Is it really their death sentence?
What?
Huh? Granny, I don't want to question your state of mind, but that's usually what happens. Usually, there are only 1 or 2 intruders.
Okay.
So, this is the first time a group has appeared. The 2 young women blinked at each other in confusion. Why did she have to speak in riddles, especially in a moment like this? What exactly did the elder want to tell them? I don't quite understand what you're Oh! With her eyes wide open and her mouth ajar, Nuha stared at the older woman.
Wait!
But Grandma, you can't seriously be talking about that outdated legend. It's only a fairy tale you used to tell us when we were children. But Nuha's very excited. I'm interpreting excitement during producing these sentences.
What?
What legend are you talking about? No matter how hard Asherah tried, she simply couldn't remember what her friend was referring to. And as if her friend could see the gears spinning in her head, a slight smile formed on her lips. Nua's, rather. Don't worry about not remembering. We were pretty young back then. So, what is the legend? What is this legend?
Well?
Oh, it's just that one day a group of outsiders will come to our village and irreversibly change the fate of the world as we know it. This is more than just a fairy tale, child. The sternness in her grandmother's voice made Asherah's blood run cold. An unpleasant shiver crept over her spine, and for the first time the elder slowly turned a gaze away from the crowd. The seriousness in her grandmother's dark brown eyes threatened to drive the young woman into their endless depths. Like an omen. It will come true, then probably sooner than any of us would like. that was the flashback. And now we're back to current times, aka a few hours later, at least. A strong tug on her shoulder tore Asherah out of her daydream and tore her back into the grim reality. Still, the words of the elder clung to her, tightening around her ribcage like a shackle.
Are you okay?
Are you all right, Ash? You were lost in thought for quite a while. What? Yes. By now, her childhood friend had whirled her around to face him so that he could examine her face intently. Only a few centimeters separated the two of them. With every second, the chains around her chest tightened.
Ash.
Turning away from Suin, she looked back at her father. Maybe the elder was right. Maybe these 6 trespassers were in fact the group mentioned in the legend.
Dad.
I don't want these people to die. This is not about what you want, Asherah. They must die in order to preserve order and to keep the promises of our ancestors.
No!
Her father's eyes widened, and his mouth opened to crack. It pained her to see him so shocked and disappointed. The looks of her friends resembled that of her father, causing the heat in her cheeks to simmer. It can't be that they're bad people, after all. The blonde man's gentle smile flashed before her eyes. Is her name Joseph? I forgot already. So sorry. The way he looked up at her. The way he trusted her, despite the desperate situation his group was in. How he had eaten her food without any hesitation. Not even Suin liked her cooking. Although her childhood friend always tried to cover it up with a smile, she knew that he had forced himself to eat. Joseph was the first to genuinely enjoy what she had made. She hadn't noticed any malice in his expression, or any attempt to deceive her. The lives of 6 people rested on her shoulders. The rest of the village, the people present in the room, they all wanted the strangers dead. A nervous sigh escaped her lips. Gathering all her courage, she approached her father. Before he was able to react, her fingers gently encircled his rough hands and her eyes met his, giving him no chance to look away.
Please?
Father, please. Perhaps they are people from the legend that the elder spoke of. To her left, she could hear Nua draw a sharp breath, but Asherah's father cut Nua off before she could interject. She had hoped that he knew what she was talking about, considering the elder often spoke of this legend. What makes you so sure that they are really the people from the legend? Even if they are, what if the legend is a bad omen? Talking of a catastrophe instead of a blessing. These are fair points. Though I do not think we should kill people, but I don't know. I don't know the context as well. Like, maybe this is good for you. I mean, there are rules. They did get lost, though, so that was... But this is a prequel, so all the things I know about Under the False Sky, I don't know. I don't know if it was good or not, but this is where this crystal is coming from, which is very interesting to find out about. She recognized the tone of his voice. It wasn't one of doubt. It was as if he was testing her. And though he tried to hide it under a stern expression, she could make out a twitch at the corners of his mouth, as they tried to form an anticipating grin. If they show any sign of being a danger, they can be executed. What if we ignore the elder's words, murdering them without giving them a chance? Murdering them? Oh wait, I read that too fast. I meant to break that up. Okay. Murdering them without giving them a chance. What if we ignore the legend and suffer the consequences for the rest of our lives? The facade shattered like a mirror as the broad grin that Asherah's father had struggled to hide pushed its way to the surface. Okay. With just those 2 words, the chains around Asherah's chest loosened. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she was able to draw a deep, freeing breath.
Wait!
Chief, you can't be serious.
Chief!
Please reconsider. We can't just let these people go. They've seen the Mother Crystal. I didn't say we were letting them go.
What? Oh.
I only agreed to keep them alive. I didn't say anything about letting them go. They'll live, but only under my conditions. Oh, first of all, they won't leave this village under any circumstances unless they want to die. Second, they will do the work they're tasked with and help the residents.
Wait!
You can't be serious. Finally, they must be evaluated by the Elder. Failure to comply will result in their immediate execution, and their heads will be put on display as a warning to all outsiders. These are my terms. Are they good enough for you, Asherah? His arms crossed over his chest. He looked down at his daughter. A gentle smile graced his lips. She felt a sudden rush of excitement and relief. If the group went along with it, no blood would be shed. No one would have to die today. She had to tell them. Okay, great points. What if these outsiders try to flee? In the end, they'll still be nothing more than prisoners, just that their cell will become a little bigger. They will surely be plotting their escape from here as soon as possible. Do you really think that these people can navigate this forest better than we do? It would be easy for us to track their trail. Asherah could no longer listen to her childhood friend and father argue. She had to get to the dungeon. These poor souls must have been freezing with their clothes so wet and the ground so cold. Hey, Ash, wait. Ash. The calls of her friends faded as the door closed. She did it. She really did it. She stood up to her father and even dared to disobey him. These strangers would be allowed to live, and maybe she would even be able to learn something about the world beyond this village. That's such positive thinking. We love that. What were their cultures like? How did their villages and towns look? What kind of people lived in them? All the questions she had harbored for so long might finally be answered. Fueled by a combination of euphoria and adrenaline, her legs carried her out of her home and across the village square, past the bewildered villagers and into the forest. Hidden in the thicket, not too far away from the village's entrance, was a heavy metal hatch concealing the path to the prison. Using all her strength, she pulled it open, the trap door emitting an ear-piercing screech as it clicked into place, revealing stone steps leading into the depths below.
Wait!
But before she was able to descend, she heard loud, hurried footsteps behind her, accompanied by her two friends, heavy breathing. Warily, they sank to their knees to gasp for air. What are you doing? You didn't have to follow me. I'll release the prisoners. On father's terms, of course. By yourself? What if one of those monsters overpowers you, or even tries to kill you? You're weak. You're only one woman. There are 6 of them down there. 6! You haven't done any training. Who knows what they're capable of? I can't believe it. How can you be so naive? You're a priestess. Or have you forgotten your duty to our village? To the Mother Crystal? No, to all of humanity. Your life is worth so much more than all the other humans on this earth combined.
I'm sorry.
I understand. I'm sorry, Sue. Priestess. Duty. Like a dagger, Suin's harsh words plunged deep into Asherah's heart, paralyzing her. And he knew. He knew exactly what these words would trigger in her.
Suin.
It's okay. It's okay. I think you've made your point. What our overprotective Suin is trying to say is that he is worried about you. Worried about me? Asherah? Or the priestess who wears my name and my body?
Ash.
I got it.
No, I understand. She did what she knew best and smiled. In the end, he was right. It was her fault. I read that as if I was being more defiant, but that's okay. Yes, it was her fault. Then, follow me. Ooh, releasing the prisoners. Exciting. She carefully made her way down into the underground, taking one step after another so as not to bang her head on the low ceiling or lose her footing on the damp metal. Behind her, she could hear Nua speaking to Suin in a sharp tone, but she couldn't make out their words as they were swallowed by the echo of their footsteps. The further they descended, the darker it became around them. The only thing guiding them was the weak flicker of the torches at the bottom of the stairs. It wasn't much further. When she finally stepped on solid ground, she was greeted by sticky coldness, drawing her into an unpleasant embrace.
Okay.
"Leave it to me." The young warrior strode past her to the heavy metal door. His spear firmly gripped in one hand, he grasped the door handle with the other. He stiffened as though there was a huge monster on the other side, eagerly waiting to tear them apart. But there was nothing of the sort waiting on the other side. It was just the same as when she had brought them food. With every step she took towards the cell, her heartbeat became stronger, louder, so loud that she was afraid that even Nua and Suin could hear it. Like before, the 6 people were sitting shoulder to shoulder in the narrow cell. The only difference was that the unconscious young woman had regained her senses. Asherah glanced at the tray, which had previously held a pile of bread and a large bowl of her home-cooked soup. Her heart jumped. The bread was gone, and the bowl was empty. They had really eaten it. She found it difficult to hide the smile that formed on her lips as she turned her attention to the blond man in the long beige coat. Compared to before, he looked considerably more tired and pale. His lips, which had previously shimmered a reddish color in the light of the torches, had turned slightly blue.
Hey.
"Oh, there you are again. And this time you brought company." Yes. These are my close friends, Nua.
Hey.
Hi. And Suin.
How annoying.
Did you come here to execute us or to gawk at us like monkeys in a zoo? Monkeys in a zoo? The woman with the jet black hair tied back in a bun, Asherah called her name as Rachel raised her voice. It was clear that she didn't trust Asherah, neither did the rest of the group, for that matter. After all, their lives were at stake. Everybody except for one. Neither. To be honest, I came here to make you an offer that could save your lives. But that's only possible if you agree to the terms. Holding on to the bars, the young man dragged himself onto his weak legs. This was the first time they had been close enough for her to get a good look at him. His pale skin, the long fingers that wrapped around the cold pipes, and those amber eyes, warm like the sun on cold winter days, captivated her.
Interesting.
What are your terms? Terms. Oh, okay. Let's see. I can do probably one more scene now that our character is Rachel instead of Asherah. Let's see. As the heavy wooden door closed behind her, Rachel surveyed the long, narrow, homely-looking corridor of the small house. The hallway was lined with doors, each leading to a room containing a wooden bed and a small assortment of simple furniture. Oh, wait, Hilla! From the room next to her, she heard the voice of a young Candace and the more mature, feminine voice of Hilla. However, they were too muffled for anyone on the other side of the door to understand. It was none of her business how other people conducted their relationships. And yet, the bond between the two women left the mercenary with an uneasy feeling. She diverted her attention from the neighboring room and continued down the hall to the stairs. Do you mean, like, because we're professionals, or, like, you two would like to be with someone, or something else, or, well, maybe we're just worried in this general situation. That's fair. The ground floor mainly consisted of a large open space that combined the living room, kitchen, and dining area. It also housed a small separate bathroom and an even smaller storage room. Oh, this looks cozy, though. Their only direct escape route was the front door, or the windows. In the living room, she spotted the blonde scientist, Malachi's friend, standing in front of the open fireplace, focused on putting his leather gloves. Lost in thought, he didn't seem to acknowledge her presence. He studied the gloves extensively as though they were much more interesting than her. He was wearing that familiar smile on his lips that made Rachel's blood run cold. When he's that oblivious to his surroundings, it would be child's play to overpower him. Then out of nowhere, she felt a muscular arm slide over her shoulders and pull her backwards against a hard, yet oddly comfortable chest. Her heart skipped a beat. The air in her lungs ebbed. Her eyes opened only a fraction. Is this Malachi? ? Oh? Glancing up, she met the warm, honey-colored eyes that were so familiar to her. sparkling gleefully.
Malachi.
Please don't do that ever again. Perplexed, he glanced down at her. He was unaware of the sheer panic he instilled in Rachel, the racing heart that was difficult to control, the sweat that formed in the back of her neck and on the palms of her hands. But how was he supposed to know? The two didn't even know each other that well. They were just drinking companions who had spent a few nights together. Nothing more.
Hey.
Come on, what's wrong? He gently placed his head on her shoulder, his stubbly beard lightly tickling her cheek. She caught her breathing becoming unusually irregular, and her heartbeat slowing within her chest. Such familiar intimacy.
It's just...
He's too close. It's just, please, don't sneak up on me like that in the future. You scared me. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Yes.
I know.
Man.
I just wanted to surprise you a little.
Yes.
I know. In an attempt to calm herself, she let out a deep breath before grasping his hand and gently pushing his arm off of her. Taking a step back, she examined the young man who was now standing before her, freshly dressed. And do you like what you see? Ugh. Same. Does this man have no sense of decency? He smirked down at her, his hands on his hips. She felt his eyes studying her from top to bottom, taking in her every move, her curves, her chest, rising and falling. He looked at her, looked at Rachel. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't prevent her face from growing warmer with every second. Okay, I forgot that it's Malachi and Rachel. Though again, I cannot get too close or attached to these characters. My god, this is an Under the False Sky story, so we will see what happens. Is he doing this on purpose?
Joseph!
There was something else I wanted to ask you. Malachi's glance passed by her and landed on his scientist friend, and without paying her any further attention, he slipped past her, heading for the fireplace. From his exuberant expression and the bounce in his step, he seemed like an excited puppy hopping from one toy to the next. The creak of a door echoed from the upper floor, followed by Candace's unmistakable laughter, tearing Rachel from her thoughts. Her attention turned to Candace and Hilla, who appeared at the top of the stairs. Hello. Both freshly clothed, they showed no signs of the events that had been etched to everyone's memory. It truly was a miracle that Candace was able to laugh so cheerfully again, just as she usually did, especially after the incident a few hours earlier. A miracle. Could one really call it that?
Hey.
Oh, we are all here. Oh, wait, someone's missing. Almost. That's right.
I see.
You're right. Phineas is missing. Maybe someone should go and check on him. He looked pretty down. Although the older woman said that, neither of the new arrivals seemed willing to actually go and check on the poor boy. She knew exactly what the two of them were attempting, and she didn't like it one bit. Why would you take the kid on an expedition like this if you find him so burdensome? But she didn't want to waste any more of her time either. So she stomped loudly, as if she wanted to take out her discontent on the steps, past them and up the stairs, her hands buried deep in the pockets of her pants.
Rachel?
Rachel, where are you going? To get Phineas so we can finally get this over with. She left the group behind and shuffled down the narrow hallway until she reached the far end. The young student was right behind this door, directly across from her room. Resolutely, and a bit rougher than she intended, she knocked on the wooden door leading to his room. But she received no answer. Just as she was about to speak up, she was interrupted by a weak, shaky voice speaking to her through the barrier.
Joseph?
Oh, Phineas, what happened? A look of confusion spread across Rachel's face. Why was he asking about that terminally insensitive guy of all people?
No.
It's me, Rachel. Can I come in? The mercenary took his prolonged silence as permission, and so she pushed the door open and stepped into the small but comfortably furnished room. Ooh, cute bed. The layout mirrored her own, a simple bed, plain curtains, and a dresser in which all their belongings could be stored. And there he was, sitting. Crouched on the floor like a bundle of sorrow, his back against the bed, his legs tucked tight against his torso, and his face buried in his knees. Silently, she sat beside the boy and looked at the ceiling, her head resting against the soft mattress as she waited. Despite the fact that she had wanted to leave as quickly as possible to get this meeting over with, it would have been inappropriate to simply drag him out of the room by force, especially considering the emotional state he was in. Oh. It wasn't long before the poor student's sobs permeated the fortress he had built within his arms, and the silence was broken. We have to stay here forever, don't we? I mean, what other option do we have? At last he looked up, his pleading gaze directed at her. His eyes were red-rimmed and shimmered like emeralds in the reflection in the late afternoon sun. His lower lip, no, his entire body trembled with every breath. The expression of helplessness on the boy's face reminded her of someone, and a painful memory that she kept all too hidden all too well in the depths of her heart. It reminded her of herself.
I'm scared.
I will never be able to see my little brothers and sisters or my mother again. I didn't even get to say goodbye to them. They're going to be so worried. As if of its own accord, her hand rose to his cheek, where here her rough thumb gently brushed over his freckled skin to wipe away the endless cascading tears. To her surprise, he didn't pull away or protest her sudden and uncharacteristic attempt at comfort. He seemed almost grateful for the gesture.
I'm scared.
All I wanted was to help people in need and to be with him. Huh? And now we're trapped in this village full of people who are out to get us.
Well,
At least they didn't send our heads back to camp. An almost mocking laugh escaped his lips at her statement, as if her words were a lie designed to lull him into a false sense of security. Who's to say they won't change their minds anytime they want? He was right. In the end, perhaps she didn't want to lie only to him, but to herself as well. They found themselves in an unfamiliar territory, isolated from civilization and surrounded by people who wanted to kill them. Like butterflies caught in a web, their fate left to the hungry spider, and Phineas was the one who had the courage to acknowledge it, this bitter reality in which they found themselves. He had the courage to face what she could not. It seems then, just based on like the opening scene, that they ended up staying, well, I'm assuming they'd live the rest of their lives out here, unless they do try to escape, which would be something. I wonder if we see that here in this, story. The hollow knock at the door caused Rachel to look up, pulling her out of the worry that threatened to consume her. It was Malachi leaning against the doorframe, with his arms folded across his chest, looking down at them with his familiar, warm smile. He stepped forward until the distance between them and the ever-so-calm botanist was closed. Rachel had to crane her neck up to see his face. She needed to see him, that sincere smile. But before she was even able to react, he reached out his hands to both of them. What do you say? Let's go, huh? As soon as the group left the small house and stepped onto the dirt road, they were met by the same stranger who had taken them from their cell. She was young, probably the same age as Phineas. At least, she seemed that age, given her gentle, almost childlike manner, and her seemingly naive attitude. With her arms folded behind her back, she came closer to the group.
The clothes fit you all perfectly. What a relief. I will now take you to my father and the village elder.
Yes.
So that we can be evaluated, right?
Yes, that's right. It's not as bad as it sounds.
Okay.
Well then.
Gracefully, almost as if she were dancing, the girl turned away from the group and strolled along the path that led them from their house towards the center of the village. For a moment, they exchanged perplexed looks. Joseph shrugged his shoulders, trailing after the girl. We all are going. Okay, all 6 of us. Hopefully evaluations go well. Candace and Hilla accompanied right behind, followed by Phineas, then Malachi, and last but not least, Rachel. As the group made its way through the village, the gravel crunched under the mercenaries' feet. It was almost melodic, like an entrancing lullaby. While they appeared to be the only ones outside, Rachel knew they weren't alone. They were being watched. She could feel their gazes on her from all around,
onlookers excitedly watching them make their way to the scaffold. An icy shiver ran down her spine, and almost instinctively she scratched her elbow.
Hey.
A warm hand stroked gently over her back, as if it were the anchor saving her from that unbearable, heavy feeling that threatened to pull her into the endless abyss. Gratefully, she gave in to him, her anchor. Her cramped muscles began to relax, and her eyelids grew heavy. That idiot. Why is he always so...
Rachel.
Are you okay? No. A mix of confusion and concern crossed the man's face as he squinted down at her. But she avoided his gaze. She shouldn't continuously give in to him. And yet, a pleading voice deep inside her wanted to trust him, to be captured by him, to show her her vulnerable side. Do you want to talk about it? No. What a blatant lie. She wanted to talk about it. Oh, how much she wanted to. About this situation they were in, this sinking feeling in her stomach, and this fear. But she couldn't do anything except stare straight ahead at the rest of the group, who were already a few meters ahead of them. To Phineas, his head lowered in defeat. To Candace, who had her arm wrapped around Hilla. To Joseph, who was at the forefront, nodding in response to the questions posed by the curious and overly friendly stranger. Suddenly, she felt Malachi's fingers gently stroking her palm, sending a warm tingling sensation through her body. Carefully, almost as if she was made of porcelain, he tightly interlocked his fingers with hers. For a moment, she wanted to protest, to pull back. No. Did she really want that? Did she really want to escape his warmth? I mean, I don't think you do, but you're fighting it for some reason. For reasons maybe because I don't have enough information. Who knows? Slowly, she glanced up to him, but his eyes were fixated on the ground below, and his expression was unreadable to her. The two walked beside each other in shared silence. They didn't need to say anything to each other, because this moment of gentle intimacy was more meaningful than their words could have been. Once more, she let her gaze wander, the lump in her throat much less painful than it was before. Even when they were first released from their cell, the mercenary had been amazed that such a large and exposed village could exist within the depths of the forest. And although they had lived isolated from the rest of civilization for centuries, the villagers were not too far behind with their own advances. Yes, the houses and furniture were a bit old-fashioned, but they hardly differed from the small villages Rachel knew outside the forest. How was that even possible?
Well,
Here we are. But before the mercenary was able to worry about it any further, a loud clap interrupted her thoughts, turning the group's attention to Asherah. While Rachel had been lost in thought, they had arrived at an open space, the village square, most likely. Once again, that uneasy feeling resurfaced, suffocating her. It was time. Her hand, which had tightened around her partner's all the more, became clammy. Her muscles started to cramp up. But there's nobody here. Well, we're not quite there yet. We still have to go to that house over there. With a smile that would warm the hearts of those around her in any other situation, the young woman pointed to a house that stood out from the others, simply due to its size. She gestured for them to follow her before making her way towards the house. There was no point in just standing here. Rachel knew that, and yet her legs just wouldn't obey her.
Hey.
Ray. The soft murmur and the warm breath in her ear gave her a momentary shiver. And as if this was the push she needed to set her body into motion, she took a step forward. Hey, what was that for? The usually composed mercenary felt the warmth rising in her body once more. The spot on her ear, which had just been gently caressed by Malachi's breath, tingled with anticipation. Her hand clasped the spot like a shield, hoping to quell the heat boiling up inside of her. Turning to her partner, she looked for an answer to her question in his face. However, he merely returned her gaze with a broad grin that contained no trace of his real intentions. Come on, the others have already gone inside. Okay. And indeed, they were the only ones still standing on the square. That realization, that warm, pleasant feeling came over her once again, and she couldn't help but avert her eyes from him. They had to go inside before the others realized they were missing. They had to... But instead of turning towards the building, he walked towards her. His steps were slow, his hands buried in his pockets, and his eyes were fully locked on her. What is that idiot up to? If he comes any closer, we have to... Chaos whirled through the woman's mind like a tornado, preventing her from forming a single coherent thought. Only a few centimeters separated them. She could feel his breath on her nose, almost like a soothing caress. The scent of freshly ground coffee and rosemary enveloped her. His scent. It reminded her of the nights they had spent together when she had gratefully sought the tender embrace of his arms. The nights in which she had felt his rough and strong, yet gentle hands on her naked skin. The nights they were one. And as though her body remembered it just as well as her heart, her eyes closed. But nothing happened. What? Did you think I was going to kiss you? Did she really think he would do that? Kiss her? They weren't even in a romantic relationship. So why did she crave it so much? Why did her heart tighten so painfully at his reaction? Was he making fun of her?
Well,
I don't want to put a show for all the curious onlookers watching us so expectantly. He leaned close to her ear. No, I'll save that for tonight, when it's just the two of us, when I have you all to myself. And like nothing had happened, he leaned back again and nodded in the direction of the huge house. Are you coming or what? I think we've kept the others waiting long enough. Before Rachel was able to say anything, he set off, and she could only scramble to follow the man. With every step she took, she feared that her heart would explode. Will I ever even manage to survive until then? Will I even manage, rather, to survive until then? Well, we'll see. Okay, we're gonna stop now. Great. Wow. Oh, I'm gonna leave us before we get to the big evaluation. Hopefully it all goes well, and I don't even know where this is all going. I'm assuming they all survive. Maybe some people try to escape later on, but who knows? Hoping for the best here. Definitely something's gonna happen with Joseph and Asherah, for sure. And everyone else, I like that we got to see a little bit of like Rachel's point of view on top of Asherah's also for this part. So it's very interesting. I'm really excited, and I appreciate the snippets of voice acting because it's kind of hard to come up with a whole bunch of different voice types for the characters when there's so many of them. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this story so far. I hope you are too. I will continue next time, but for now, if you liked the video or you were liking the story so far, please feel free to hit the like button. And if you'd like to see more of when I post for Under the False Sky Hecatomb, then please subscribe to my channel and press the bell for notifications of when I post this series or also any other visual novel playthroughs that I will be doing. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye!